Okay, take two. Yeah, so I did just sort of spend the last sort of half hour pretty much just talking to myself, and obviously just realised that the video was paused. So yeah, I'll probably make this a pretty quick one, just because we are sort of basically already drawn on the charts. So just sort of go through a little bit of a price action of overnight and what we're sort of seeing today. I'll start off with Aussie. At the moment, just ticked past 1 o'clock, and we did see a drive just coming into the end of that hour just then, which is quite interesting because we've got the BOJ coming out today. We saw DXY sort of sell down in the last couple of minutes. So we're talking, if we get down onto a low time frame, you can see here that this is the last 5 minutes of the hour, and Aussie just pushed, you know, 14 points into the close of the hour. It is correcting a little bit of that move, but maybe this is in anticipation for some sort of data coming out from the BOJ, because BOJ, for some reason, don't like to sort of say when they're dropping the news. You'll be sitting there and all of a sudden the markets will just go and shoot. And you're just like, okay, well, I guess something may have just come out. But if we just have a quick flick across here, as you can see, tentative as to sort of when it may be coming out. I don't think we've heard anything yet. No, so still in the waiting game. So potentially you could just sort of see that as a little bit of an anticipation move. But it is interesting as to where it at least sort of pushed it to, because as I said last night, this was like a 10 to 15 point range. It was just boring grind, and that we had that little push early, got us up above sort of 60, 66.12, I think we peaked out at. Sold back down, had a nice, this was actually a little bit of a channel that I was watching at the time, and I was like, okay, here we go, bang, popped out the channel, we're going to come through, and it just never eventuated, and obviously sort of came back down here and dribbled down into the close of the session. But it has sort of given us now this little, this early retest. So this was off the business confidence move. We did see the sellers again try and sort of push it back down here, and we can, as you can see here, we got it marked out. These are where the buyers were. We'd expect the sellers to come in here. We've got a little bit of a we've got a little bit of a falling resistance that was coming through here. So we had a bit of a confluence at this area. So getting back over 85, despite whatever the reason is as long as it can hold it, is even better. But, is pushing us past, where the sellers were expected to be, and back up into, that grind range that we had sort of through last night. Always a bit frustrating when you've already gone through all this stuff in detail. But yeah, so we are seeing Aussie push through. Levels you want to see it beat, you want to see it above, obviously, yesterday's highs, that wick high. But in the short term, at least, we can see that there was a lot of selling coming in around this sort of like 90 to 66 or just under 66 area. So, back above, just for sort of mental factor as well, back above 66, I think would sort of do quite well. So as you can see, if you push it across over here, where we at, coordinates, just get it to the spot. You can see that obviously this is going to be a sort of nice sort of crucial area, because it's the round number. It's that sort of psychological thing that, yes, okay, you're done, well, done, but you're back up above that sort of level there. So we're pushing down, and obviously sort of this is flipped quite early in the hour, which is generally a fairly strong sort of bullish sign that you're going to get the continuation. Because when you get the sort of continuation, or the flip, sorry, just coming into the end of the hour, generally it sort of puts it in a sort of a position where you're going to see one of those little hanging man candles, and you'll see a little bit of a fizzle out. But if you can flip it early, then obviously they've tried to push it back down, and as you can see now, Aussie's just pushing up a little bit higher, sort of moving through into this. So just sort of check, I don't think there's anything really sort of coming out at the moment. North stock market rescue package back by, okay. So this is interesting here, because last week we saw that move, that sort of talk from this one. Yeah, we saw that talk from China, sort of saying about sort of special bonds, and sort of like we're seeing the Asia stocks get absolutely decimated. I think Hang Seng's under 15,000 at the moment. So, obviously them sort of come to the party and pushing these things. Last week, that's what I was saying, when they had the special bonds, we saw like risk really sort of get a quick push. Like, I mean, you couldn't beat what was ultimately happening, which was the like a large sell down. Obviously, like I'm mainly talking Aussie with this at the moment, but gold also impacted with this as well. Um, it sort of they just used it as a basically an excuse to sell into. So, as they sort of pushed it up sort of 20, 30 points just on that little sniff of news, obviously people just hammered into it and it was what it was. So, that's certainly a little bit of news to sort of watch out for to sort of see if there is something more that sort of eventuates from that. We're still seeing these sellers that were sort of coming in here yesterday. They're coming a little bit back in over here now. So, I mean, we're only sort of 7 minutes into the hour. So, certainly a long way to go with it all. But we could sort of see something push out a little bit stronger over the top side here. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately, Aussie very much still in this downtrend as it has been for the most of the year, but in the short term here and now, I think above 66 would be a sort of a very bullish sort of sign. Take out yesterday's wicks, and then I think we could see a little bit of a continuation moving to the top side there. If we zoom out a little bit, though, we can see that we've got this sort of falling resistance back up over this top area here. So I think any sort of move above 66 or 66.13, I think is still going to be running into some difficulty around that 66.40. But as I mentioned over the weekend, this is the kind of area that I really want to see what happens because you've got this area through here to me is going to be quite difficult because these were very strong reactions off sort of like the US data, the NFP, CPI, these kind of things. So if we can sort of get above yesterday's highs, that's great, but you've got this falling resistance to deal with. You've got this horizontal 64.50, I think I sort of called over the weekend as a sort of an interesting sort of level to sort of see what happens here. You break it, that's actually quite bullish, but obviously you need US dollar to sort of sell off a little bit for this to be happening. People love to be selling Aussie at the moment, as you can see all through this year, and particularly after the break of this range, people just couldn't sell enough of it. So certainly it's got a lot of sort of resistance to sort of deal with, but at the moment it seems to be sort of showing some sort of signs of recovery. We're pushing right up. What are we at now? Sort of 97. So getting towards that 66 handle. Flip across gold quickly. Gold, you can see that same sort of deal. It was trying to move. It just sort of was grinding sideways. This to me sort of feels like a little bit of a sort of stop hunt through here. This is on the 4 hour, so it probably shows a bit on the 30. You can see support through this area here. We had buys here. We had buys all through yesterday's session. Drove it up a little bit, and then obviously, okay, fine, we're moving up. Bang, people tighten up their stops, put it underneath these wick lows over here, and what do? They come down, take it out, and they rip it over there. So, if you can hold this sort of 2020 area, I think that sort of would be at least short-term bullish. I mean, gold, I always sort of say about $5 through Asia session. There's just not enough volume that sort of tends to move. Occasionally, you get the faster moves, but usually it's just that sort of fairly subdued sort of $5 range in my experience. But really, the two levels that I'm looking at with gold, we got a little bit of an intermediate sort of level here, the sort of 25 zone, a little bit of a swing point inside this little range. But for me, I want to sort of see the sellers at 30 taken out because, on the way down, you can see how strong it was. And actually, that last little push from 29 or whatever it came from, 29.30 area, that's the last drive that we saw right down to that test of 2000. Obviously, it's recovered somewhat since then. And, we're actually sort of seeing the 61% sort of come in perfectly for this last move as well. So where they've just sort of tended to come in here. So, within a cent or two. So, it's certainly showing a little bit of indecision because this move, actually, the recovery move here, I've actually taken it off because, as I said, I've already done the video. But this also, well, let me fix this up. It just comes down to the lows there. You can see that this also came in at that 61% sort of move. And then obviously this recovery, bang, this has come in at a 61% as well. So let me just grab this one out of the way again. So to me, that's showing quite deep pullbacks in both directions, which is a sign of a bit of sort of indecision. It is forming up for a little sort of triangle here, but realistically, as I said, we can see that on the way down, the 30s were very strong with the sellers. They did sort of try and sort of break out the top side over here, but obviously they came back in for another go, and even last night really defended it quite strongly. So once you can see that the sellers are gone at this level, first target's going to be obviously that wick fill from Friday night at 39. But above that, then we can be sort of starting to look over some of the smaller ranges, 44, and then realistically above 44, you're looking back to 55 to basically undo that move along through here. So, I mean, this is again forward thinking. We've got a little bit of work to do before you get there. But, if these are basically based on if we can see that the market wants to sort of take out those sellers at 30, that's your real, for me, that's your short term key level to see it break. We're at 21 now. You want to hold above here. If you don't see the sort of the sellers support it at this level, as you can see, it was tested quite a few times. I said I thought this was a bit of a stop run. Sellers have stepped back in again, and they're just defending it again down here. So if we can see that the sellers can hold this, then okay, yes, we've got an idea of a range. If the sellers are depleted from here, then realistically we're looking sort of a little bit lower down here. I would say, potentially 2009. We might sort of see a little bit of a bounce in that, but 2000 test is pretty much on the cards, certainly underneath 2009. But you'd want to see, because it's been defended so many times here, there's a lot of liquidity build up here. If this goes, then you're going to see a lot of these sort of positions just bail out as well, and that's going to really drive gold a little bit more to the downside. I'm sort of short term sort of bullish on it, but of course you want to see it above 25, 30, 39 as the sort of levels to beat in the short term. Flip across to DXY. As you can see, we've just had that little sort of sell down into the end of that hour. It hasn't really sort of done too much with it all. This is a known area. If we put it onto the 4 hour, this was that area that we identified over the weekend, which basically is, as I said, going back, it's these wick lows from start of December. And market seems to be sort of like respecting this quite strongly, both sides here, as you can see. Buyers were here, sellers were trying to hold it here. We've popped through into the end of the session overnight, and obviously now it's playing its little act as a support down here. So I think market realistically, I think, is just waiting to see what the BOJ does. I don't think they'll do anything. I think if we have a look at, it was -10 or negative 0.1% expectation. So, they're not expecting him to do anything. The talk around what I've read and, commentary and this kind of stuff sort of definitely seems like they're moving towards the idea of sort of raising their rates. But I think sort of certainly in the short term, I just don't bank on them doing anything. Maybe that's just because they haven't done anything for so long. But certainly into the end of that last hour, we saw quite a quick sort of sell down. As we have a look put it on a shorter time frame here, as you can see, it was very grindy. Then at 12:55, bang, hammered down. So it's obviously something. Maybe this was sort of thinking, okay, because the BOJ obviously they don't announce the time; it just sort of happens. So maybe this was a sort of a bit of a sort of expectation, because you do see people sort of putting not so much putting bets on, but they're sort of saying, out of the last 20 rate decisions or something, it's always come at, 20 past 1 or whatever, these kind of things with it all. So people sort of speculate as to what time they're going to drop. But I think the whole point of it is that it's tentative. So, it could come at a sort of set time, but obviously they don't have a set time for it. So, people are just sort of maybe sort of sorting their positions. But I think that's going to be the big mover over the next hour or so. I expect that probably sort of to come in. Let's get back out onto the 4 hour here. As you can see, it was sort of coming down to bottom side here. The day on the daily here, I was sort of saying, look, if we could take out these wicks, it would be quite a straight shot down. But of course, I should have sort of stipulated that you want to get your close down here, because it's come down here, found the buyers again, and just shot back up into the end of that. So realistically, it's still in this little sort of, consolidation area at the top here. So it's not really giving up much either way. We are seeing a little bit of a tip over from the oversold, but not enough to sort of say that, okay, we're going to be sort of seeing a further downside. I think you want to see a big solid candle moving down here, which is going to show that, okay, market is booking it from this area. Likewise, if you sort of see a big solid candle to the top side here, I'd expect these wicks to be taken out. And 104 is really a very sort of strong area where I think we're going to see a lot of reaction because, of course, this was the area where the market sold it down the hardest from that last drive, which came all the way down to our price target coming into the end of last year. So a little bit of sort of indecision at the moment, not really too much to sort of to be sort of giving away. Flip on to copper. Copper, it did attempt to sort of get through this area, obviously closed quite strongly, bang, sold down. This is an interesting move here actually from copper because this has flown up actually. As I said, I did these videos, or did this video about 40 minutes or so now. But at the time, obviously, it was sort of coming down quite strongly. Well, not strongly, it was just sort of drifting back down here. But we've had obviously quite a strong reaction off that sort of bit of sort of China news that we just sort of had a look at a moment ago. This sort of mulls. So it's obviously, so again, it's just more sort of they're mulled. They're talking, they're thinking about it. The rescue package of 278 billion. But as you can see, copper loves that. Copper's like, okay, sweet. Well, you know what I mean? If they're going to be pumping all this money in, well, obviously we're going to get a whole bunch of sort of manufacturing happening. Bang. Well, price is going to sort of push up a little bit. People better get set early. But that's the sort of, I guess, sort of the thinking, the background sort of noise of it all. The here and now with the chart is we're finding buys through this area. So if we sort of have a look down. Actually, where's a better place to sort of put it here? We can see that obviously it sort of had that sort of pretty much like gold, like Aussie, that sort of sell down last couple of days of last year into this sort of downward sort of little trend. It's starting to grind sideways. As you can see, we've got the little consolidation box through here. I think this is going to be the area where we're sort of going to see the next move. A bit of a close at the top side here, so we've got the little alert set up there. Or a sort of a break and a close to the bottom side here, because as much as they're still trying to sell this down, you're finding buyers, and as you can see, we were coming down quite strong. Now we're just grinding sideways. So we've got the sort of RSI. It's obviously still. Whoop, where'd it go? Maybe I just closed him. I closed it there. Anyway, I don't know. There's them all over the shop here. Anyway, whatever. The RSI was sort of showing that it's pushing up a little bit higher. So with that, we're actually seeing sort of obviously a little bit of reaction through here. But yeah, I think you just want to see these continuation moves. You just don't want to sort of, not you don't want to see, but when it's just up and down, up and down, up and down and back, it's really there's no point sort of jumping too hard with anything. But I think sort of certainly a break back up into this range could be quite short-term bullish for copper. Let's see how China reacted to that news. Bang, and we sold down. There we go. So this was the Head and Shoulders little price targets just been taken out. That's good. So this is what we sort of identified over the weekend. It was this little Head and Shoulders up over the top here. Where is that little RSI gone? Pull this back on here. No, I use the stosh, don't I? Yep. Okay. So this was the move that we sort of were calling up along the top. Where was it? Over here. So we're seeing a little bit all over the shop here. There was this little sort of negative divergence up the top up here. As you know, if you watch my things and that, I love the negative divergence. That sort of led into this little Head and Shoulders that we identified over the weekend. Measured move, bang, down here. It's been taken out. It was sort of starting to sort of firm up a little bit, and it still looks like this might be sort of working out as a little bit of a sort of channel to coming to the downside here. I did attempt a couple of little breakouts along this area here, but if we sort of drag it back, I think this must have been some sort of, I can't see now, but it's an area that we've sort of identified previously. It's come back down here. It was trying to hold here. This was actually quite a bullish little candle moving up just before. This is the top side of our larger range that we've been identifying and sort of working off. As you can see, it was a sort of area of strong sort of resistance here, which led to that big sell down it was what sort of was the sort of top of that triangle on the lower time frame here with the sort of confirmation little back test of the actual breakout move. And now we're sort of seeing it sort of obviously they were trying to hold it through here. As I said, it's quite bullish till we had that sort of like sort of China news a couple of, well, yeah, China news, I guess, speculation a couple of moments ago. And that's obviously really sort of flipped on its head. So that's what was sort of driving it back down here. So really coming back down into the range, as I've sort of said with these things, if you can sort of really like, this is on, what are we on, the 4 hour here. You want the daily back in here, but realistically, back down under these, like through to the middle of this range here, this is going to be a failed breakout. And as I said, failed breakouts like counter swings, as you can see here, here, here. So I expect this to sort of really come back down towards the sort of 713 area if we can come back down underneath this little zone through here where we know, I think that's you got a lot of choppy areas, but say this is zone through here. If we can come back down through here, I would say that a test of the bottom part of the zone is definitely on the cards. Very grindy sort of coming up through here, so there's going to be little areas of support, as you can see. And we can see that the buys were here, and this is where it sort of stopped a little bit at the moment. So I think sort of like if it can sort of maintain this sort of selling action into the end of the session, then I would say that this is going to be called a sort of failed breakout. But I think sort of again, look, obviously BOJ is not direct with this, but I think BOJ is really going to sort of shake the market up. And as it does, I think we're sort of going to see sort of those flows come onto a couple of the markets. All right, that's about it from me.